Top 30 Android interview questions and answers. 1. What is Android? Android is an open-source operating system developed by Google for mobile devices like smartphones and tablets. 2. Describe the Android application architecture. The Android application architecture consists of 4 main components: activities, services, content providers, and broadcast receivers. These components work together to create a responsive and interactive app. 3. What is an activity in Android? An activity is a single, focused screen in an Android app. It represents a user interface with which the user can interact. 4. What is a fragment in Android? A fragment is a reusable component within an activity that represents a portion of the UI. Fragments are used to build responsive and modular interfaces. 5. Explain the concept of intent in Android. An intent is a messaging object that allows components to request actions from other components, like starting an activity or sending data between components. 6. What is a content provider in Android? A content provider manages the app's data and makes it available to other apps. It is used for sharing data across applications. 7. What is a service in Android? A service is a component that runs in the background, performing long-running operations without requiring user interaction. 8. What is an ADB in Android? ADB, Android Debug Bridge, is a command line tool used for debugging and managing Android devices and emulators from a computer. 9. Explain the concept of Gradle in Android development. Gradle is a build automation tool used in Android development to manage dependencies, build processes, and packaging of the app. 10. What is the difference between serializable and parcelable in Android? Both serializable and parcelable are used to pass data between activities. However, parcelable is more efficient for Android as it requires less overhead compared to serializable. 11. What is the Android manifest.xml file used for? The Android manifest.xml file contains essential information about the app, such as its package name, permissions, activities, services, and more. 12. How do you handle different screen sizes and orientations in Android? You can use resource qualifiers, like layout folders with different names, and layout attributes, like layout_weight and constraint layout, to create responsive layouts. 13. What is the view holder pattern in Android? The view holder pattern is used in Recycler View to improve scrolling performance by caching references to the views within each item layout. 14. What are the different storage options available in Android? Android offers several storage options, including shared preferences, internal storage, external storage, and SQLite databases. 15. Explain the activity lifecycle in Android. The activity lifecycle consists of several states: onCreate, onStart, onResume, onPause, onStop, onDestroy, and onRestart. These methods are called as an activity transitions through different states. 16. How can you communicate between fragments in Android? You can communicate between fragments using interfaces, shared view model, or using the parent activity as a mediator. 17. What is the view holder pattern in Android? The view holder pattern is used in Recycler View to improve scrolling performance by caching references to the views within each item layout. 18. How does async task work in Android? Async task is used for performing background tasks without blocking the main UI thread. It simplifies threading and UI updates by providing methods for executing work on a background thread and updating the UI on the main thread. 19. What is the difference between view.gone and view.invisible in Android? View.gone makes the view invisible and does not take up any space in the layout. View.invisible makes the view invisible but still occupies space in the layout. 20. How can you handle runtime permissions in Android? In Android 6.0, API level 23, and above, you need to request dangerous permissions from the user at runtime. You can use the request permissions method and handle the result in onRequest permissions result. 21. Explain the concept of a service and its types in Android. A service is a component that runs in the background to perform long-running tasks. There are 2 types of services: started services, used to perform a one-time operation, and bound services, used to establish communication between components. 22. What is a broadcast receiver in Android? A broadcast receiver is a component that listens for system-wide events or custom events, broadcasts, and responds accordingly. It allows different components to communicate without knowing about each other. 23. How can you implement data persistence using SQLite in Android? You can use the SQLite OpenHelper class to create and manage a SQLite database. It provides methods for creating tables, inserting, updating, and querying data. 24. Explain the concept of a loader in Android. A loader is used to load data asynchronously, especially when the data source is a content provider. It helps prevent blocking the main UI thread and ensures smooth user interactions. 25. What is the difference between serializable and parcelable in Android? Both serializable and parcelable are used to pass data between activities. However, parcelable is more efficient for Android as it requires less overhead compared to serializable. 26. How can you handle network operations on the main UI thread? You should avoid performing network operations on the main UI thread, as it can cause the app to become unresponsive. Instead, use background threads, async task, or libraries like Retrofit to perform network operations. 27. What is a thread pool executor in Android? A thread pool executor is a class that manages a pool of worker threads for executing tasks concurrently. It helps manage thread resources efficiently. 28. How can you handle memory leaks in Android? To prevent memory leaks, make sure to release references to objects when they're no longer needed, especially in contexts like activity and fragment lifecycles. Use tools like Leak Canary to detect and fix memory leaks. 29. Explain the concept of ProGuard and R8 in Android. ProGuard is a tool that helps shrink, obfuscate, and optimize the code. R8 is a more advanced code shrinker and obfuscator introduced in later versions of the Android Gradle plugin. 30. How can you optimize the performance of an Android app? To optimize performance, you can use the appropriate threading mechanisms, like async task or threads, for background tasks, optimize UI layouts and minimize nesting, use the view holder pattern for recycler views, load images efficiently using libraries like Glide or Picasso, avoid unnecessary memory allocations. Monitor app performance using tools like Android Profiler and Systrace. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell notification icon for our upcoming updates.